computer. You can start.
Okay. My name is Daniil Bogomazov. Let me see. Can you guys hear me? Good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Very good.
Yes.
So, Lev invited me to do a presentation about Excel. My name is Daniil Bogomazov, as said. I work for a marine company, Crowley Maritime. I work as a director of analytics, in charge of data modeling, data engineering, business analytics, mostly in the area of ERP and HCM. As part of my job, I use multiple tools, including Microsoft stack of tools, including SQL Server and Microsoft Power Platform, including Power BI, Power Automate, Power Apps, and so on. You can see some contact information if you want later to contact me. So as I said, today's presentation will be about Excel. We will cover such topics as brief history of Excel. We will look at some alternative spreadsheet solutions. We will look at the most interesting Excel features, at least per my opinion, but I think the industry experts in Excel would agree that in the recent development, they're probably the most interesting. We will cover dynamic array formulas. We will look at new Excel syntax and not so long back introduced LAMBDA function. We will look at Power Query, Power Pivot, and briefly touch base on Excel automation using Office scripts. And let's jump right into the history of Excel. So the first spreadsheet program was VisiCalc, written for Apple II computer in '79. Let me just see. Let me hide this so you can see better. The person who created it, his name is Dan Bricklin, who is considered the grandfather of modern spreadsheet. I included a site it's still active site. This person still works as a consultant, still active in the industry. You can download this VisiCalc solution to your computer and run it on DOS and try how it works. That's pretty much how it looks, black and green screen. And this solution was so popular that people were ready to buy it for $2,000. October 17 is considered like a spreadsheet day. And later on, in the beginning of '80s, early Microsoft employee Charles Simoni is a man behind some of the company's most successful software, including Word and Excel. So this person, Hungarian American software developer, and by the way, he's on the Forbes list as one of the richest people in the world. He is basically the father of Excel, considered father of Excel. Original name of the tool was called Multiplan, and this was black and white screen, like you see it on this page. The main competitor at the time of Multiplan was the program called Lotus 123, and that was the killer application of IBM computers. And this application, Lotus, was the industry standard in '80s. So that was a dominant application for the spreadsheets. And to outsell it, Microsoft decided to bank on the user-friendly interface and possibility to change the spreadsheet design. Thus, the first version of Excel for Macintosh was interesting. It was initially released on Macintosh computer. On September 30th, '85, it was released. And since then, Lotus started to experience gradual decline of popularity. And ironically, after 30 years, in September 30th, '24, IBM stopped supporting Lotus 123 application. If you go to Excel, modern Excel, under the advanced option, there is still a check mark there to support a lot of spreadsheets. So this is how it looked, Microsoft in 85. And then in 1990s, Microsoft introduced this toolbar you see on the top. And what's interesting, Excel was the first application where the Excel toolbar was introduced. So this Excel already reminds us more modern version of Excel. Then between 90s, Microsoft started gradually release different version of Excel. And in 2007, there was a major update to Excel with the introduction of the ribbon as an alternative to the toolbar, and increase of rows, where it was 16,000 plus rows before, and then they increased the size to 1 million plus rows, and they increased the size, the width of the spreadsheet to 16,000 columns. Those are very nominal numbers, even they indeed exist in Excel spreadsheet. Absolutely never recommend to populate the spreadsheet with that many fields, because it will crash immediately. Right, and in Excel 2013, Microsoft included a new feature called Power Pivot, which is basically predecessor of today known platform Power BI. In 2016, Microsoft introduced Power Query as fully integrated into Excel. And in 2019, Microsoft started to release, no longer does discrete versions of updates. It's part of the channel updates. Depending on what channel, the frequency will depend on that. And in 19, another major update to Excel was dynamic array formulas. And as we go through this presentation, we will touch base and see a little demo of all those features. So today there are 3 flavors of Excel. Microsoft Excel Desktop, obviously the most popular. There is Excel for web. There are some use cases for that as well. And there is a Excel for mobile devices. So that's the look of modern Excel. There are a few alternatives on the market, competitors to Excel. Obviously, the most popular one is Google Sheets. I put 2 links here at the bottom. If somebody interested to see where Google Sheet beats Excel, and another link opposite to it, where the other tool is better than the first one. So Google Sheet is number 1. There are a few less popular on the market, but there are a few more, like Zoho Sheet. What's interesting that Google Sheet is free. Some other applications you have to pay some fee. Zoho Sheet, Airtable, WPS spreadsheets. I personally don't know much about those 3 I just showed. I mean, played around with Google Sheet, but don't know much about the rest of the applications. So Excel, interesting facts that 88% of Excel books today have errors. However, Excel occupy 16% of the entire world population use Excel today, which is more than 1 billion people. And why Excel is so popular? Yeah. And the main reason, because it's really good for business data analysis, data storage, ad hoc reporting. It's probably the most popular, in quotes, database. Pretty much every computer has Excel files. It's easy to use because of the 2-dimensional grid concept. You see rows and columns. You can reference the cell and see immediate results. Microsoft does a great job bundle Excel as part of Office 365, and it's truly integrated with other Office applications. On the other side, Excel has its own limitation, of course. And if you work with some date ranges outside of this range before 20th century, you definitely will have problems because Excel doesn't support that. So Excel is really truly business application. And let's just go through some functionality I mentioned earlier. And I will start toggling between my PowerPoint presentation and Excel, so we can see some Excel features. We will start with dynamic array formulas. So here on the left, you see this little table. This is just product name, price, discount, and sales. And I'd like to demonstrate what is array formula first. So the definition of array formula is basically Excel formula that can return set of values of variable size, right? So in the past, in Excel, if you select a range of cells like that and click enter, you will get an error. And the error will be something like that, value. But it's no longer the case because with the introduction of this new engine of Excel in 2019, Excel, rather than returning singular value or error, it now allows to spill, it's called a spill formula down. So if I reference this range, you see it spills it down. And now I can do, let's say, plus. I can, let's just do this. And I can do the range of these cells and click enter. And as you see below, these two cells gets added together, basically. And now if I want, I can wrap them in a sum function as an example, and I will get 100%, which is basically equivalent of all these cells. So in a nutshell, this is what the array function is. So function which return a set of multiple values. If I type something here on the way of this array spill, you will see the spill error, right? So now I will just show a little bit more complex example. So again, this is our simple table. And in this case, I'm just referencing not just one cell, but the entire thing. And you see the table being spilled horizontally and vertically. So if I put my cell, my mouse, click on the mouse in any other cell rather than the first cell, you will see here it's grayed out. It means that there is no formula here. Formula is still sitting here. But again, if I put anything here, it will create the spill mistake. So now let's look at so this is basically the concept of array, but there are specific array functions. In this case, and another thing to mention here, since this is array function already, which spills this range, I can reference to it again, going back to the cell and use this pound sign. So this is a new way syntax to reference an array. So now it's dynamic because you reference the cell. It doesn't matter how much it grows to the right or down. It will also always capture the entire range of cells. So there is like a filter function. And in this case, what we are doing, we are referencing to this range. And what we are doing here, we are using this column H. And we return the price of products which are more than $10, 10 units, for example. So now you see a shorter subset of values you see here. Here is just a little bit different example. I'm returning same little data set where the product starts with letter P. So left first character of the product should be equivalent to P. So just one function. Another function is sort. So what this function does is basically exactly what it tells. It just sort. If you pass one argument to it, it will just do alphabetical sorting. With the two arguments, I'm saying I want to sort same range, but by the second column. And it does same range. It sorted in not using alphabetical order of the product, but the sort order of the price. In this case, it's done opposite. we sort it in a descending order versus ascending order. So another function introduced is a sort by. So basically, I want to sort product by some other field. In this case, I'm sorting product by price. Another function is unique, basically which provides distinct values in the list. Or sometimes you want to truly see unique values. So depending on what parameters you pass to the function, you will get different results. So there is a sequence function which provides basically a matrix. Let's say if I do 1, 2 rows, 2 columns, start from 1, I get these numbers. So this is just basically a sequence. And there is another function which generates random numbers. So this is basically combination of these functions together with the other functions which already part of today's Excel allows to create much more powerful solutions than before. Before array functions, there was options to create them, but it was much harder than it's now. So let's talk about new Excel syntax and Lambda function. So until 2020, the only way to reference cells and write formula was like you see in column C. So you're saying basically equal A3 plus B3, and I'll show it maybe on the spreadsheet here. It will be easier to see. So that's a very typical way to write a measure, where with the let function Microsoft introduced now, you can define variables as part of Excel formula. And in this case, what we are saying here is that I want to define variable A equal to the value in cell A3. I want to define variable B equal to cell B3, and then I want to return the result. And there is also Lambda function. Lambda function, it's basically something similar to what you could define in Excel before in VBA. Basically, now instead of using VBA, you can define functions in Excel itself, avoiding to use VBA. So it takes parameters, and then you define what you want to do with those parameters. So let's look at example here. For example, okay, we will return to the same data set we discussed before. So in this cell, I just created this formula. I want to calculate price of the product using price, discount, and sales. So basically, what we are doing here, we multiply price by account for the discount, and then we calculate the sales tax, and then we round it up, no cents. So you see this number. So that's a typical way to do this calculation in Excel. But now with the introduction of Lambda function, all of this can be hidden. So we defined the function under name manager. This is where function definition is right now. You define it here. You give it a name, and now you just call this function final price, and you pass parameters to that function. So that hides complexity of formulas and make it more user-friendly. And if for whatever reason we decide to change the definition of this function, we can always go back here, do something different, redefine it a little bit more, and it will automatically reflect in these cells. So this Lambda function returns just one value. where this another Lambda function here, this one called final price, it returns one scalar value. Here it spills the entire set because of the dynamic array function. So it returns, if you look here, you will see that there is no formula here. So one function returns all of it. It returns price, it returns discount, it returns sales tax, rounding, and final price. So what you can do, I drag this function down on every cell, right? But what we can do instead, again, coming back to this array functions, we can actually put it here on the left for the sake of time saving. What you see here, this function is only written in one place. There is no function, there is no formula anywhere below or up. You look here, and if I go to the right, you will see that the way I defined it, instead of one particular value, I reference the entire range, right? And I can add values here on the right, and you will see that it gets populated here. Okay, so this is about Lambda function, and I'd like to spend a little bit time to show the differences in syntaxes, how it was written in the beginning, and how you can write functions today. So this is a very typical way how you write function in Excel. Everything is in one string, and no parameters in the first case. So it's much harder to understand what this function does. It takes time to untangle this function. So the second option, you see that instead of just referencing the cell, because of the introduction of let function, we can specifically name variables here. But still, this is pretty hard to understand what this function does still, because it's not properly formatted. And at the bottom section here, you see the way how I typically, when I write formulas in Excel, I format them. So it becomes much easier to understand what this function does. In this case, I use Lambda function. I pass parameters to this function. As you see here, 1, 2, 3 parameters. And then I define what this Lambda function does. And inside of this definition, I also introduce variables. And then I repurpose these variables in the calculation below. So Microsoft doesn't really have much documentation on how to format functions. Typically, any expression you open, they will be written in just in one string. But as I said, it's hard to understand. That's why I typically do it this way. So when anybody look at my spreadsheet, it's much easier to understand what the formula does. Okay. So now, so we just what Lambda function I just showed you. It can be used in conjunction with the function I show here. I personally didn't use them much, but those functions allow you to simulate like loops and do some transformation and so on. Let's talk about Power Query. So Power Query is a data transformation. In another way, Power Query is a graphical interface. Sometimes they call it M language. That's the script generated behind graphical interface designed when you click on buttons. So Power Query is a data transformation and data preparation engine. It comes with graphical interface, as I said. Because Power Query engine today, it's available in many tools. It's available, as you see in this table, in Excel for Windows, for Mac. It's in Power BI, Power Automate. It's actually also available in Azure Data Factory, in the analysis services, and some other applications. So while it's ETL tool, extract, transform, load, it does amazing job to connect to multiple data sources. It's probably like hundreds plus different sources you can connect and bring them together, those data sources, apply different transformation steps. It does it all amazing. The biggest challenge with this tool is really load, because Microsoft currently limits where you can load data only to a few tools. So you can load data either to Microsoft Data Lake Storage, Dataverse, Microsoft Excel, or Power BI. So you cannot really, let's say, use this tool, do the transformation, and save a result of that transformation into CSV, for example, or you cannot load this data back to SQL Server. So that's a limitation, one major limitation of this tool, because I think Microsoft initially promoted this tool as a self-service BI tool, not as a professional ETL tool. That's why there is that limitation. However, they just announced like a few weeks ago that they will make ability for Power Query to save results of this tool in CSV to SQL Server and other in a different formats, CSV, Excel, JSON, XML, and the other industry formats. So that will be really exciting and will extend the capability of this tool big time. So among the tools we're going to discuss today, I would say Power Query is probably the most impactful tool on the life of analysts, because 80% of our time we spend with data preparation, and maybe another 20 analyzing data. And that's exactly what Power Query is for, to cleanse, aggregate, clean, split data. Right. I made really a quick example here to give you an idea what this tool does. Since I work for a shipping company, I made a very simple example here. You see 3 different ships or vessels here, and I made this a few cost categories. On a vessel, you have crew, you have to feed crew, you have to provide technical management to the crew, and you have some port expenses when you go to port, right? And you have this, let's say, daily running cost of the vessel, right? And what I want to do, I want to apply this running daily cost to the vessel from this date to this date, right? Instead of applying these dates to every single road, I just put it here, and because it's indented, I want all of this to be applied to every single thing. And then these rates I want to be applied here. So on the right here, on the right side here, you see the results of the transformation made in Power BI. So for example, if I put different date here, so I just increased, I want this cost to run from February 13 to July 22, right? I just plug these numbers, I right click, click refresh, and my records were immediately added through the transformation steps, through the logic. If, let's say, if I filter here on this vessel through ocean, or whatever, spirit vessel, ocean spirit, yeah, let's do that. And let's say, let's just filter on crew. You will see that by just passing these 2 cells and this information, I basically was able to break down my my one records here, which is convenient for data entry, into multiple records in a database. So this 5,000 or 5,000 you see here, and then it breaks it down by months. For example, this rate applicable from the beginning of 13th of February, and by the end of February, by end of March, and so on, all the way to July 2022. So all the scripts basically, let me see, go back. If I want, I can just take this, put this down, make it another vessel, I don't know, ABC. I'll call it ABC vessel. I just made it, click refresh. Oh, I need to remove this filter. And you will see I just added this vessel somewhere to the bottom here with all the calculations.
Daniil,
Yes.
I lost you a little bit. You saying you're using Power Query. Are you querying external database, or you're querying data on this spreadsheet?
On this spreadsheet. So the way it's built, I'll show you in a second. So for example, I create a named range here. It's called input. That's what it is, right? It highlighted this range. So now when I go to the script, how it was created, here in the script, hopefully you can see it. So this is a list of steps applied to the input source. So it says connect to Excel, and can connect to that input range, which I defined in Excel. So that's why in this case, I connected specifically to that spreadsheet, but Power Query has 100+ different connectors. You can connect to SQL Server, you can connect to SharePoint, you connect to folders and so on. So I connect in this case to this range, and then I apply different steps. In this case, we connect to the source, we make first row to be a header. Then because Excel has 1 million rows, for example, right? I want to pre-filter my range only to the first 1,000, and then I want to remove blank rows because to remove blank rows and scan through 1,000 first cells is much easier than scan through 1 million and find those blank rows. So I apply different steps. Let's say in this case, I apply fill down, so it populated all the blanks. I do filtering. I apply different formats, data types to the cells. I do some calculated columns, which is the difference between start and end. Here, I create another. If you look here, you will see I created a list inside of the cell, which is basically reading this formula. It says create a list inside of this cell from this date to this date, and so on. So you can apply really, really powerful data transformation steps, including group by, I do group by, and so on. So you can, it has 200+ different transformation steps, and they are all managed, for the most part, they are managed from here, so you can apply different buttons, do what you want. So let's say if I do highlight this cell and I click delete, you will see that steps got added to this pane on the right. I can go here and I can do filter, and you will see another steps got added. So the way how people work with this tool, 90% of the steps they usually record manually using click and buttons experience. And then you can go to Advanced Editor tab. That's where you see the script generated behind the scene, which is called M, as I just mentioned before. And you can modify it to make it more complex, because not everything can be graphically done. And what you see here, every step applied here on the right, it becomes its own variable. So, and this is how you read the script. So it starts with let define the variable. First variable define, it's gonna, we call it source, which correspond to the step source here. And let's define it like this: read data from Excel. And then let's, in the next step, we're gonna call it variable promoted headers, which correspond to the step here. And then what we're gonna do, we're gonna take previous step, which is source, and let's promote headers, and so on. And then you have in statement, and this is what it returns. So you in this area, you define all your variables, and here you do return. And in this case, it says inserted multiplication. That's the name of this variable in the line 15. But I can very easily say I want to return this variable and put it here. And it will return this variable and will ignore everything else. So M is considered like a lazy programming language. So it only executes the steps which are needed for the calculation, and it will ignore the rest.
Wow. And so this editor, Power Query editor, is now part of Excel, right?
It's part of Excel. It used to be an add-in in the past. I don't know. I think it was internally Microsoft developed tool, but it was add-in. You had to install it, and in 2019, I think they integrated this as part of Power Pivot. So among all the features we're going to discuss, this is probably number one feature which made Excel really powerful. If you talk about Excel, another half of Excel is just Power Query. So this is very, very big tool these days. And as I mentioned, it's not only working in Excel itself. You can write your script here, you can do whatever you want, and then you can go to Advanced Editor. You can copy the script from here, and you can go to the service, Power BI Platform Service, and you can paste that script there, and you can schedule it. And then once you do that, because it's in the cloud, you go to data, and under the data, you go get data. you see this new option, Power BI platform. You click on it, and you have this option called from data flows. So it's the same Power Query, but in the service they call it a data flow.
Right. What is Dataverse?
Dataverse, that's a common data model which allows you to do mapping of different tables company have to the industry standard. So, for example, there is a vendor table, right, and or customer table, and customer table has common 100 different fields like account, name, cell phone, and so on. So you address, you have all these fields. So in Dataverse, basically, you can map data which is specific to your organization to the industry standard. So it's a variation of the database. It's a variation of the database.
And Power Query is available in desktop application as well?
Yes, it's available. This Power Query, in this case, it's part of Excel, but it's also available in Power BI. Because Power BI is a tool which does ETL transformation, it does analysis, and it does visualization. So in Power BI, they brought all these three functions together, and the Power Query is an ETL tool for Power BI. Yeah, but once you deploy it to the service, it's no longer called Power Query; it's called data flow. And once it's in a service, your different people in the organization can connect to the same data flow, whatever logic you put it. And in case if you want to redefine or adjust or change or filter or do anything to that logic, you can also go to the data flow in the service, make the change needed, and it gets automatically promoted to all users who use that particular data flow. In essence, it's like it works as a view, SQL view. With the only difference, it has ability to connect to multiple data sources. So in our organization, we use different solutions, and of course ETL solutions. But let's say if data is not all data available in one server, and you don't have ability to use professional ETL tool, then Power Query is really great, and data flow is really good option, because it allows to connect to Snowflake, to SQL Server, to Excel, to SharePoint, to folders, to JSON files, to anything you want, and you can connect to all of them and do whatever transformations.
Hold on. So I'm in Excel, and I can create this Power Query, which will go get data from external SQL server and put it in the spreadsheet?
Correct.
Oh, okay. So I don't need to do any programming. I can just use this tool to do it. Okay, good.
Correct. Yeah, and often I see, like on the blog, you all often see what is better, Power Query versus, let's say, Python. I mean, it all depends what you do it for. You use it for. If you are in Excel, you don't really need. If you just do straight transformation, there is no need for Python, because that's additional layer of complexity. Just use the tool which is very natively integrated in it. It's just part of the solution. Where, as I mentioned, today version of Power Query, it's called ETL, extract, transform, load, but the load functionality is extremely limited, because you can only do this transformation and you can load this data either here, or you can load this data to Azure storage, or you can load it to the data model. But you cannot save it as CSV natively. I mean, there are definitely workarounds to do that, but it doesn't natively does it. Yeah, but this is quite powerful tool. I personally like this. It's a nice toy. So on this step, as I showed, you have these steps. This is the M language, and you can, if you promote it to the service, and it's no longer called Power Query, it's called data flow. Okay, so that's about Power Query. So the next topic of the conversation is Power Pivot. What is Power Pivot? It's basically very early predecessor of Power BI. So if you go, so you click on this button, and it opens up environment where you can build analytical solution, right? And I will show it on the next slide. But I don't really recommend to use this solution, even though it's part of Power BI. If there is ability, if analysts have access to Power BI platform, then I would rather use Power BI than Power Pivot, but it's because it's really same thing, but because it's in the cloud, you have much more capabilities. You can you have more processing power. You have ability to schedule it, your data sets, and so on. So that's why that wouldn't be a recommended approach. So rather than going to Power Pivot and click on this Manage button to build your solution, you want to build it in Power BI, and then that button we already clicked earlier. Instead of using data flows, in this case, you want to use Power BI. Power BI. And once you connect to it, I'll show it on the next page here. In this case, that's exactly what I did. I clicked on data, I clicked on get data, I clicked on database, oh, sorry, Power BI. Oh, what happened? It disappeared. Interesting. So once you connect to the model, you will see this is a connection to the model, and this is basically pivot table. You connect to the pivot, and you can build analytical solution. So in this case, let's say this is how analytical solution looks. So you have 4 tables, 1, 2, 3, 4, and every table could be result of that Power Query I just showed. So let's say this actual data table, it could be result of 10 different tables pulled from different sources, aggregated, cleansed, and so on, using Power Query tool. And then as a result, you make it one table in the model. Same thing. So you have this table, same thing with payroll. And you have these 2 independent tables. Let's say we're talking about professional service company who provide some consulting services. So you have hours you bill for the services provided, and you have employees who, for example, get paid for the services they provided. Right? They're 2 different processes, but billing hours and paid hours, they both relate to the dimension called employee. That's why you see this employee, there is a relationship going to payroll data, there is a relationship going to actual data, and that's what allows you in Excel or Power BI basically bring measures from both tables, as you see here, actual hours versus paid hours. You can compare them because this is part of the dimensional modeling. So, and as you can bring very different tables or different processing organizations, which are independent from each other but shareable across multiple across dimensions, and that's how you can bring on a pivot table, for example, how much person billed actual hours versus how much person get paid, right? So this is done through Power BI, but we consume this model in Excel. And what's cool about this is that you can consume it in Power BI, like in Power Pivot like that, or it's probably going to give me an error, but let me click it again because I lost connection. What it does, when I double click on that measure, it sends a query back to the server, and you can see underlying data which make this number. And this measure, which is called measure, it's a configurable thing. It has 2 properties. You can configure what it will calculate, plus you can configure what it will return on double click, what data to return. If you have highly complex, let's say, models, if I go back here, you have hundreds of tables. So you can write your DAX script, that's the analytical language used behind this analytical solution. And you can, on a double clicking, it will return results based on your billing, basically. And every single measure is configurable to return different results, right? So this is just a simple power pivot, right? But what you can also do, you can take this model, like I just did here, like I will just do it now, and click it here on the right. So this is still just normal pivot table. But then, I clicked wrong button, click cancel. I think, okay, so there is an option here. This thing prevents me from doing this. You can convert these formulas into the cube. That's what I just did here on this section. So it was like a one pivot table, but once I converted it in a cube formulas, now you can see, if you see here, it's no longer a pivot table, but every cell is independent. It says cube formula, and when I click on it here, you see it references this cell, it references this cell, and what it allows me to do now, I can build my own reports with my own layout, with my own colors. I can do calculations like that. So it allows me to basically break pivot table into small elements, so you can build reports of your liking, however you want to lay out the design of your report. So this is done through the cube formulas. But these cube formulas, they connect to, if I go to data and queries clear, here, you can see it's the way you read it, cube formula, and it connects to this connection, which is connection here, ops data model. And this connection is a connection to Power Query, to Power BI. So basically through this connection, cube formula reads the connection, and then it references these cells, and you can build whatever solution you want, and you can leverage the power of dynamic array formulas. You can go ahead and push it back to Power Query if you want. So you can do different things in combination of different of all these different solutions. So that's Power Pivot Table or Power BI. And another thing I'd like to, so as I mentioned, you have different methods to consume it. You can do pivot table, charts, tables, cube formulas. In fact, by the way, I forgot to mention, when you click on this button, it creates this report for you. And if you click, right-click and go to table, and you click here, you see the query Power BI generated, Excel generated. In this case, it generated MDX query, which is old analytical language Microsoft invented, and the new language is DAX, which is behind the Power BI. But I can go here and I can type my other statement, let's say in DAX, and I just say employee. Hopefully it will work. And I just created totally different live connection to the table in Power BI model. So this is another way how you can connect to Power BI as well, and it's live connection, right? Any table can be consumed through Power Pivot table, or just in a tabular form, right? So there are many different scenarios where it can be used. And another one, I'm not personally very experienced in this, but I know that it exists, and I'd like to learn myself more about this tool. In Excel, if you noticed, you don't see it here because of this, I don't know how to move it, but I made a snapshot. You see this Power Automate, or Automate. So that's basically the tool Microsoft introduced a year or so ago, which allows you to record your steps. So as you see on this picture, I just clicked on this. First of all, this works only in the cloud. You download, you publish Excel spreadsheet to the cloud, you click record button, and then I click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I did a sum function, and what it did behind the scene, it recorded macro, and using this language called TypeScript, which is a subset of JavaScript, and basically it works both. So you can use TypeScript, or you can use JavaScript if you know JavaScript, and paste this language into this box, and you can basically automate, write different scripts. So in this case, what it did, if I go to the new page and I run the script, it will just reproduce exactly the same thing. I mean, this is a very basic example, of course, but yesterday I watched YouTube video where a person basically created a script which connects to GPT chat service, and it does some amazing things. You can see GPT window here embedded right into the screen, and you can type your question here, and it triggers a call to the web. I mean, it's pretty amazing to see. But then you type different scripts here, and every script saved as its own file in OneDrive. So that script shareable, so it can be shareable across multiple worksheets. And so these scripts, they're all independent from each other. But then you can use Power Automate tool as an orchestration tool to basically orchestrate different scripts. Let's say I want to run the script based on email being received in my mailbox, and something like that. So that's basically some area I'm not very familiar myself. I know that it's there, so I want to learn that myself as well. But that's pretty much, I put a few links here as part of the presentation. I didn't want to mention them here, but test if you want to learn more about Excel, the best websites, that's the link. If you want to learn the best channels, YouTube channels, you can click on this link, and it will provide abundance of resources about Excel. So that's hopefully we're on time for 54. That's what I wanted to share to you with you guys today. Thank you for listening.
Wow. Thank you. You're a magician. You know Excel better than anybody I know.
No, I know some, but it's definitely a pretty cool tool. And while I was preparing to this presentation, I just realized that it's kind of today they combined a lot of different languages inside of Power BI. You can do M transformation language, you can do SQL, you can do DAX, you can do MDX, and now they introduce this Java TypeScript language. So it's pretty amazing. Plus, it's so amazingly integrated with Office 365 and other applications.
Yeah, I remember making macros like 10 years ago, or using VBA, Visual Basic for Applications, to automate stuff. But now things completely different.
Yeah, and the Visual Basic is definitely still have a place to exist. But with this cloud Office scripts, I think Microsoft is going into the direction in maybe next 10 years. Visual Basic is not going to be there anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because in the cloud, that's what Visual Basic doesn't work in the cloud, but this Java TypeScript language, it does.
Okay. Any questions?
No, I just want to note that ability for Excel to run queries existed, I don't know, since 90s, I think. Was like LAMBDA, ADO protocols, right? That ODBC, those kind of support, even doing this some web queries.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in Excel, you can click there under the data, and it says like legacy data sources, and the one you just mentioned, Oleg, all of them there. Yeah. And the new method is through Power Query. And in fact, in some cases, old methods actually I found them working better than new, because it just depends on the solution. Sometimes Power Query adds additional overhead. It depends what you do, what database you work with, and so on. So sometimes legacy connection is still better than Power Query. That's also possible.
Okay.
Great demo. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Absolutely great. Thank you, Daniil. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. It was a great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of great detail. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Daniil.
guys.
It was great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Cheers. Thank you.